So we restart. Thank you to the speakers of our first panel, and I hope you can engage also in the next panel conversation. So we speak from a place of restlessness, which is the generator room of Central TEJO Power Station, aware of the important role that this site and foundation have as an engine driving the nation while impacting its ecosystems. As such, we could not avoid to bring into debate the current energetic models and visions for the next years, be they connected with forms of hydroelectric power, renewable energy, or the resources needed to produce them. Calling into question the extractivism that permeates contemporary economic models, this panel titled Energy Vectors and Conservation Models offers critical perspectives on emergent models for just energy transition, questioning the branding of green energy in relation to the hydrographic maintenance of the Tagus River basin that runs through the Iberian Peninsula, and the lithium mining in Alto Minho in northern Portugal. For this panel, we have with us environmental engineer Júlia Seixas, the proTEJO movement, pelo TEJO movement for the Tagus, represented by its member Paulo Constantino, who will be speaking on Zoom. Here he is, from Vila Nova de Barquinha. And the SOS Serra da movement, represented by the farmer Carlos Seixas. I'll introduce the speakers and then we get to it. Júlia Seixas is a professor at Nova School of Science and Technology, where she coordinates the Energy and Climate Group at SENSE. She used to coordinate studies to support public policies on climate mitigation for more than 20 years. She coordinates the EIT Climate Kick Hub Portugal since 2016 and serves as the president of the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering since 2017. The proTEJO movement pelo TEJO is a citizen movement that takes on the mission of raising awareness and mobilizing citizens in an ecological and cultural defense of the Tagus River and its tributaries, aiming to gather all citizens and organizations in an exchange of experiences and information in order to consolidate and amplify their distinct operations as a social organization and mobilization. The movement is composed by 45 entities of very diverse backgrounds in defense of material and immaterial heritage, and more than 10,000 citizens through the social networks. And the SOS Serra da movement is a civic movement, not partisan and horizontal, that has developed actions in opposition to lithium mining in Alto Minho. Since the beginning, its objective is to protect the territory and the heritage of the 5 municipalities where Serra da is included, raising the awareness of the local population for the dangers of extractivism by creating bridges with movements and associations that oppose lithium mines in other parts of the country. I give the floor to Júlia Seixas, our first speaker. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. My first words is to thank Margarida to inviting me here. I have to say that as Margarida presented me, I'm in engineering, so I work with numbers, computational models, stuff like that. And what I bring today to share with you is to invite you to come with me in what is the mainstream narrative nowadays for our energy future, for the energy system of the future. And my point here is to bring the attention if this mainstream narrative is okay, or what can we expect it from this new carbon neutral energy system that is so exciting for so many persons. My first picture to you is to show you how, illustrate how we as humans have been used and consumed energy in the last more than 100 years. As we can see, we have this very abrupt increased pathway of energy consumption. This refers to the world. And what we can take from here is the two things. One is what is behind this pattern, and there are mainly two key variables. One is the increase of the population, and the second one that we use to think about a derivative is, a second derivative is the per capita consumption increase. So these two increase at the same time explodes this pattern. The second thing that I would like to call your attention to this is that the world economy that in fact exists for us as consumers, that is the reason for an economy out there, is because we consume things and services. And we consume that in specific models, and there are also the production system that produce in certain models. And what we have seen is that nowadays, I mean, this is the very recent statistics, the global economy is fueled by more than 80% of fossil fuels. So for this speech about Paris Agreement and the carbon neutral world and so on, this is our starting point. We have to change this system that is governed by more than 80% of renewables. Of course, the counterpart of this system is the increase of greenhouse gas emissions. And we can see that, for example, in the middle of this pathway, from the year 2000 to 2010, we observed a very high rate, 3% per year. And the key reason for this is the Made in China model. This is the period where the Chinese economy increased its GDP by more than 2 digits. Of course, you have in the year 2020 this drop, about 7%, but this is an artificial drop in a certain sense because it is justified by the global lockdown that many countries went gone. Why we have these emissions? Well, the big share of these emissions is to produce electricity and heat. It is for industrial purposes. So at the end of the day, it's our lives, our daily lives that is pushing these emissions. Also for industry and transport, national transport. The last line, the bunkers that you read there, refers to the international aviation and international navigation, I mean the maritime transportation. When you look for these patterns regarding the different regions of the world, we can see the United States with a smooth increase at a certain point and then a small decrease. The EU from the 80s and 90s have been decreased a little bit. India increased in the last 20 years, and China with that jump that I have called your attention to. But we have to pay some careful attention to this type of statistics because these emissions are related to the countries where they are produced. So much of the emissions from China is for our goods and services that we import from there. If you look for the energy per capita consumption, you can see a very distorted world. We can see the United States up at the graph with more than 200 gigajoules per capita. I mean, it's a unit of energy. The medium, the global average is 76, and then you have the case of Africa with 15. So Africa in the last 30 years, that refers to this graph, in terms of energy per capita, consumes around 12% of the European Union. So you have to, this is an indicator that illustrate the different regions, the different economic models of the regions, not only economic and social as well. But anyway, Africa has lots of resources in terms of oil production. I picked just this one. Have represented almost around 10% of the global oil production. I have to say that in the last 20 years, if the exporters of hydrocarbons, the fossil hydrocarbons, and also the minerals for energy, represent almost of 70%, 70% of the exports value of the total African sub-Saharan countries. But nevertheless, we have this type of, this picture. I really appreciate this picture because it shows a lady that is drying this cassava past using the stones that are eaten from the natural gas exploration, but she does not use these natural gas services in the appropriate sense. So in the energy area community, but also in the other resource area, we refer this to the resource curse. And the resource curse refers more or less to the countries that have abundance of natural resources, but nevertheless have less economic growth, less democracy, and worse developed outcomes in terms of social or whatever. Well, what is the future about regarding this energy system? The key instrument that is a multilateral instrument is this Paris Agreement, which has this goal to limit the global warming at the end of this century. And in practical terms, this means that all the nations should evolve, should transform themselves in order to achieve this climate neutral economy by the mid of this century. I don't know if you are familiar with this concept of carbon neutrality. Basically, it refers to a balance between emissions of greenhouse gas and the removals of CO2. Basically, the emissions and the removals through forests, for example, because they capture CO2 through the photosynthesis, should be equal. So this is the balance that we want to achieve under this Paris Agreement. But remember that graph, the first one that I showed you, that represents 80% of fossil fuels. So it is a huge transformation in front of us. Anyway, there is many exercises that tries to understand what the future could be. And this is just one of them from the International Energy Agency. And what these prospective analysis do, I work on this type of instruments and computer models for more than 20 years, so I know very well what they are able and what they are not able to account. So the idea here is to understand how can we transform the energy system today, nowadays, to this new one that could accomplish this carbon neutral system. And this is important, the energy stuff is important because the energy system represents more or less 70%, it depends on the regions, but in average, of the greenhouse, of the CO2 emissions, okay? So if you are able to transform the energy system, in principle, we accomplish a big share of the global warming problem. So what these tools, the prospective tools told us is that three things, I mean, the three main vectors is electrification, increase electrification, not only in our houses, because we use a lot of electricity. We, in Europe, use a lot of electricity, but we have other opportunities to use more, and also electrification in industry and in transport. For example, you have heard about electric vehicles. I mean, this electrification has been proved as a very cost-effective option to achieve this goal. Also, efficiency gains, meaning that, for example, maybe you remember these old lamps that we have that for lighting, I mean, that were very...
So we apologize, everybody, for this very necessary blackout, and we will continue with Júlia Seixas. We need the presentation on the screen.
Okay. Well, I have to say that is a very, very lucrative coincidence because I was talking about electrification. So you see, I don't know the cause of this, but you see the need that you have to invest on delivering electricity. If you increase a lot the electricity demand, we have to invest on the networks, for example, in order to put that. But I was talking about the three main drivers of decarbonization, the energy sector. One is electrification, the other is efficiency. Efficiency means that we should prefer, opt for equipment more efficient, for example, the refrigerators A+++ instead of a B or C label. And then behavior changes. Usually, this type of tools do not include behavior changes. There is no way to include behavior changes in a nice way. Usually, what we used to do is to make some assumptions for the future, if people do this, then maybe the reduction of demand for the energy services will decrease by X%, for example. So just two things to illustrate, because I need this information for the second part of my presentation. One is referred to the upline that is increasing a lot, that refers to the scenario that is aligned with the Paris Agreement. And what is with the most update information is that the solar photovoltaics, solar PV, will become the new king of electricity supply. And we should expect for this massive expansion of solar panels everywhere. The second thing is this share of renewables in the global electricity. So because at this moment electricity, for example, in China has a big part from coal, and we need nice. And currently, the renewables in the global electricity system at the global level is 27%, and we need to increase in the next 20 years to 60%. And then you see there the power sector investment needs to triple in the next 20 years. And one of the reasons is to strengthen and to make more intelligent and more optimized the networks of distribution of electricity. Another flavor of this mainstream narrative for the future regards the transportation system. And for example, in this graph, it represents the share of the electric and the fuel cells. Fuel cells use hydrogen. Around 60% of the new sales of vehicles by 2030 should be electric or fuel cells. So this is the narrative for the global energy system. And then you have to have different highs to look at this. One of the highs that we should look at is how the energy distribution is, the energy consumption is distribution along the globe. We have already some, I have presented already some indicators, but we have been improved a lot. In the 1990, almost 30% of the global population did not have access to electricity, and in 2016 this number decreased to 13%. And this is important. I mean, this is not so comparable because meanwhile the global population have increased a lot. So this percentage have to be referred to the absolute numbers there. But for example, we have countries like Chad in Africa that only 80.8% of the persons have access to electricity. So my question is what does this narrative, this mainstream narrative towards carbon neutrality that we in Europe are very exciting because there are lots of opportunities there. What does this mean for the developing countries? Because developing countries need to increase energy service consumption to achieve reasonable ways of living. There is the need for high trends of new technologies, and what does it mean for these developing countries? Because this should be promoted maybe through technology transfer and mostly by capacity building. What does it mean? How to increase this renewable electricity production, the power grid networks, for example. So there is a huge amount of investment attached to this energy transition. So how can we develop this for the developing countries? And this is the question, one of the questions. Another part that I would like to bring to you is what does this mean in terms of sustainability of the planet? This picture refers to the biggest solar farm in the world that is located in India, in the province of Rajasthan, and it is spread over an area of 5,700 hectares. It's a lot. Remember one of the graphs that we see a very massive expansion of solar PV. This refers to 2030 worldwide, and according to some occupation, average occupation of this type of projects, this will require almost, by the year 2030, almost 30 million hectares in 20 years. Okay, so more or less is 1,300 times the area of the city of Lisbon. To have you, of course, if I make some percentage regarding the total area of the globe, this is not so important, but I want to bring you a specific problem with this. In Portugal, in Europe, we have this, this is the biggest one, is near Portugal, in Badajoz, is a project commissioned by Iberdrola, and there is this assessment made by researchers from the Joint Research Center in Italy, in Ispra, that assessed what are the land available in Europe for to locate, to install this type of projects. Because remember, the mainstream narrative is that solar PV is the most cost-effective option, because we need electricity, as we have already experienced a moment ago. And these guys conclude that, I mean, we have a lot of areas in Europe to install this, but when looking deeper in the study, we come up with this table that most of the areas available, available means that, for example, the protected, the areas with the legal protection for, in terms of conservation, were excluded. The areas with the lower irradiance, solar irradiance, were excluded. I mean, things like that. In Europe, the areas available is most of them arable areas, and also cereals and pastures. Because in Europe we do not have deserts in the strict sense, meaning of the term. So I see here two big problems. One is the cost of opportunity of the land, because when we install a solar PV project, we are capturing that use for that land for at least 25 years. And so in the 25 years, I cannot change the use that we have with that. And the other thing, and most of the people are okay with these big solar projects, because in terms of percentage of the total land is not so high, is that this type of projects promote the fragmentation of ecosystems. And then, because we are looking always by a specific perspective, of course, If you look only for this solar PV, is not so big problem. But when you look for other human settlements, for new airports or for new highways, or for, if you sum up all of these new projects, this is becoming a huge problem. And according to the biodiversity assessment, the land use change is the key problem, the key main driver of the loss of biodiversity at the global level in all continents. Okay, this is the big problem. Finally, finally, because I do not have much time for any other problems, but also I'd like to call your attention for another problem of this carbon neutral pathway, which is the demand for minerals. All of these technologies, the solar PV, the wind farms, and also the storage, like batteries for the vehicles, or either for to complement the PV system, because the PV system only works during the day, so during the night you have to store the electricity, use a plethora of minerals, okay? Here are some examples from bauxite to copper and zinc, and lots of them. And one of the things is the rare earths. A rare earth refers to a specific area of the chemical periodic table, and for some reason, someone decided to call it rare earths, so they are quite rare in the world. This graph illustrates quite well, is from a study commissioned by the World Bank, and shows us the demand for minerals only for energy technologies, so we are not talking about the telecommunications or communication technologies here. If you would to keep this global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, we have this type of increase. I mean, lots of lithium, lots of cobalt and indium and vanadium and nickel and silver and so on and so forth. So I will skip this, I'm sorry. It's more or less the same thing, but I will not spend the time here. So where these type of materials come from? From the extraction activities. And the extraction activities are one of the highest, one of the activities with the highest impact in terms of environment, either for energy and water consumption, for emissions, of course, because they use energy that nowadays continues to be fossil fuels. They promote this land use change that are the driver for ecosystem fragmentation, that are the reason for biodiversity loss. So what we have in front of us is, from these mainstream narratives to achieve this Paris Agreement, is a huge increase of these type of activities. Of course, you can tell me, well, what about circular economy and recycling? Well, this study make this calculation that I found very important. But if it is utopic, but if all the aluminium and copper could be recovered at 100% at the end of life, this is utopic. This is not achievable, I believe. From all products of the world, instead, the aluminium recovery content rate could increase up to 61%. Currently, we can recover it around 35%. I mean, if you recycle, let's say, 100 kilos, so I can recover 35 kilos. In the future, with lots of efficiency, we can expand this to 60%. And the copper is the same. So this means that, of course, the recycled materials are very important and can help this demand, but still the primary minerals still be needed. When you look around the world, these are only some examples. regarding some of the minerals. There are this distribution, I mean, more or less, through different regions. The rare earth elements are distributed this way. The region with the highest resources of this material are China. And nowadays, people are talking about not about the geopolitics of energy, because this has been governed by the big oil companies, but by the geopolitics of these minerals. So, for example, regarding the lithium, the solar of Atacama Basin in South America, there is a desert and the highest solar radiation in the planet, so they have very good quality lithium at a very low price, a very low cost. However, the extraction of this lithium requires lots of water, and this is, I mean, it's very fragile, the hydrology of the region. What is going on now is that, for example, the protecting Andean flamingo populations have been declining. There is already evidence about it. And of course, drinking water for the local communities that stay there for a long time have been out of availability. So my question for you, and this is my last slide, is we have to pay attention for these different counterparts of the technological options that we have, because in terms of technology, I do believe that we have the technologies to achieve this carbon neutral, but this will come with a price. And the price could come through sustainability of the planet and, of course, with the social model that you have in place. And this is applied not only for the relation between developing countries and developed countries that somehow could enter this notion that you have of colonial model. So this extraction system, I guess that will continue as we have it in the past, and also inside our countries. How can we, and in Portugal, for example, there are movements starting to question how sustainable is these big PV solar farms, for example. So my point to finalize is the carbon neutral energy system will not assure equity nor sustainability if new provisions or policies are not taken into account. And one of the critical issues here is how policy making, how policies have been defined, how policy making has been taking place. I do think that the way people in Portugal and in Europe do some kinds of policies are in a very traditional and old-fashioned. They have to look for at least two different things, and the politics do not have the instruments to deal with that. One is to look for a policy in a systemic way, taking at the same time the different perspectives. And the science, there is lots of science out there. They would need to take into account the science. This is one thing. And the other thing is to take into account the local populations and the local communities, because otherwise you can think that you are going to solve this climate change problem with this carbon neutral world, but you are generating new problems, maybe more serious than global warming. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Júlia. And to follow up, reporting straight from communities, upriver, we have Paulo Constantino from proTEJO movement on Zoom. Paulo, go ahead. We can't hear you, Paulo. I think you're muted.
No? You can...
No?
Online.
They can hear me
Yes.
online.
Yes, now we can hear you, Paulo. Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I give you cordial greetings from proTEJO, and we appreciate the invitation received from the Climate Collective of MAAT, and we hope that we contribute to raising awareness about the problematic issues in the Tagus Basin. I asked to show the first slide. I presented the pillars of living Tagus. First, we consider the water quantity. In the second, water quality. And the third, the river connectivity, not the barriers. It's a kind of misleading writing. That allows the water to flow and to be more quality. Also the biodiversity and the life sustainability that the water allows. And also final question, if we believe in the green energy of dams, produced by dams. I asked to the second slide. The third one. I asked for the next slide. Okay, it's already. And we have the Albufeira Convention, that is an agreement between Spain and Portugal, and that defines the minimal flows of water between Portugal and Spain in a transitional regime. But is a transitional regime that is in place for 23 years ago, since 1998. And the convention establishes ecological flows, but they are not in place. And the water that enters in the river basin in Spain, two-thirds are near our borderline in the Extremadura dams, where there is water retention. The Tagus in Spain is a dammed river till the borderline, from the head of the river till the borderline, and the retention of water in the Extremadura, it's for most of them. It's for hydroelectric production purposes. The consumption for the human consumption and agricultural consumption, it's just residual. So this is not consumptive use for producing hydroelectric energy, and the water is to flow to Portugal. So the water flows and flows more water than what it's established in the Albufeira Convention. But the problem, it's not the quantity of water that flows, it's the moment. And there is a big variability in the flows, in the water flows, from hour to hour and from day to day. and this sometimes Tagus is a little river, big, and even the migratory fishes cannot go upstream the river and to go to their place of reproduction. And when they can go, they put their eggs in stones when there is water in that stones, and then the variability of the flow, it goes down, and these stay in the sun, and it dies. So this is the real problem, and the variability of the flow, it's according to the profit of the production of hydroelectric power. So we defend the implementation of ecological flows, not in the Albufeira Convention, but in the management plans for the river basins that are established by the Water Framework Directive from the European Community, and that these ecological flows should be established by the unity principle of the basin that establishes that each basin should manage their needs and the use of this water and the availability of the water. So, and the use of the water for the needs of humans and ecological needs. And the ecological needs, we have to have the notion that the ecological needs, it's for biodiversity and for sustainability of our own life. When we say ecological, we are the main beneficiaries of this ecological good that we can make to the nature. And we have also transfers between the different basins that are in the head of the Tagus River in Spain. That is water that goes to intensive agriculture in the south of Spain. And with this happening, we have the reversing of the ecological cycle of the water that we can see in that graphic in the hydrologic year of 2019 and 2020. We see that 40% of the water was in this was in summer, and the rest of the 60% of the water that flow from Spain was in the other 3/4, 20% in each one. So there are more water coming from Spain in the summer than in the months of winter and autumn. So this is the reversing of the ecological cycle of the water. Next slide, please. And also the water quality. The water quality, we have the Water Framework Directive that says that the good ecological state of the water should be achieved till 2015. So, but it allows the derogation till 2027. And we hope that after that date there will be a decision to have a new directive and to maintain in the minimum the principles of this one, because it gives boundaries to preserve the water quality. And we have big problems of pollution in the Tagus River, pollution that comes from Spain. We have great fields of a green carpet in the dam of Cedilho each year. That is eutrophication and of azolla and duckweed that that is bad for also for economic activities. For example, the pollution of paper that takes water from the river, and it's and there's problems with these algae. So also there is lots of pollution in Tagus River, also in the tributaries and in the delta. The delta receives all these problems, and it's forbidden the fish of bivalves since 9 of March of this year. This is a big problem and shows all the problems that the Tagus faces about the pollution and the quality of water. Next slide, please. And we have the problem of the barriers to river connectivity. We have all the dams and weirs in Spain and also in Portugal. We can see in that map legend the barriers in Portugal. The existing are the blue ones, and it's 880 kilometers with of river that is between dams. And we only have 120 kilometers of a free Tagus River. And this causes habitat fragmentation and fragmentation of ecosystems, worse water quality and quantity, because downstream we have less quantity of water, and the stagnation of water will conduct to worse water quality. And in the dams, there is also the accumulation. Also, the evapotranspiration of water, of the water available in the data of the Confederation of Tagus River in Spain. They have data that 70% of water evaporates by the process of evapotranspiration. So we'll have less water, water of worst quality. And this project wants to build 4 new weirs and 2 more dams from Abrantes till Lisboa for water for intensive agriculture. So we think that this will bring problems to the nature, to the natural status of Tagus, and also it will prejudice the cultural, material and immaterial heritage associated to Tagus River. Next. We also, this is what we defend, that we should preserve. It's the biodiversity of all kinds of species that are in the Tagus River, not just the migratory fishes that are important and are a symbol of what are the problems of the species that are prevented for going up the river, but and the fisherman in that figure is also the presence of the man that should respect this nature, and to preserve this biodiversity. That is the principle, to preserve our own life, and there should be ecological principles if we want to preserve our own life. Sometimes they say that you are environmentalists, you are ecologists, you don't mind with the other things. But what we think at the Tagus River, it's overexploited, and so if everyone other person wants to exploit the Tagus, we have to do the opposite. We have to make the balance and to fight for a conservation of the Tagus River in its ecological and biodiversity values. Next slide. And finally, the question, if we still believe in the green energy of dams after these effects that prejudice effectively the water of one of the biggest rivers of the Iberic countries. And next, this is also the importance of the hydric production of energy. Next. And also the green product that from Iberdrola, these are graphics of Iberdrola taken from internet, and the green product is all hydric. So there are so many problems that dams have over the water. So can we call it green product? It's a question I will leave for you to answer to. And next. And also this green product has a discount. I don't think if there should be a discount, or effectively this could not be a green product. Next. And I ask you if you want to dive in a living Tagus River, and the answer we really want to give the answer in the next slide. Let's join to the president, and if effectively we want to join him. But before, next, we want to save our river before, and to have the possibility of having a good and sound and healthy river to could use for all kinds of purposes, and to dive whenever we want, without afraid and without to have a vaccine before diving in it. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Paulo. Now we have our final presenter, Carlos Seixas. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Carlos. I'm the spokesman of Movimento SOS. Movimento SOS Serra d'Arga. We, as Margarida said, are a movement horizontal, so no bosses. We are unpartisan, that's it. So no political parties in the movement, and this is my presentation. It's so as we are a popular movement, I wanted to show you some popular presentation. I wanted to put under that how the Pinho people stand up to the mining project. I wanted to do a subtitle and we are winning. But I thought, well, not yet. When we achieve that victory, I will put that in the presentation, and I'll come here another time. I have 3 disclaimers to begin. I think in Portuguese, so I think faster than I speak. So if I'm lost in translation, I'm really sorry. I'm not an activist. I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer in Pinho. And the third one is we are not against mining. We are for the preservation of territory and the defense of the heritage and local population. So when you see that not even one hole, no drilling, full stop, you can ask, why the radicalization of the speech? Why do you say no mining if you are not against mining? Well, the answer I can say is this young sir, this is the Secretary of Energy, is the responsible for this program, for this mining program, and he said, thank you, obrigado, thank you, and he said last 5th of May nearby in CCB during a conference with a stamp of European Union called Green Mining, he said those against mining are against life. I don't even want to comment about that because it's so stupid that and radical, the speech, that the only way to fight this speech is to say we don't want no mines in our country. So that's why I put that not even one hole, no drilling, full stop. That's our main objective. The other thing he said, and he said it in one meeting with our movement, an online meeting, when we asked him about the new law of mines, the draft that he did, the draft, that law, and one of the 2 things that we didn't want to believe that it was going to be legislation, one of the things is you cannot mine in a protective area if you please. Like, they forgot to legislate. The expression was sempre que possível. I don't know how to say it in English. Anytime you can.
It's possible.
If possible. That's it, if possible. And the other thing is that the law says that you can do mining, the municipalities can veto the mining project if there are private requests, but they cannot veto the mining in their area if there is a public tender. That's it. So this law was made just for this public tender. So he answered it. It is unacceptable to give the people veto power. Do you want to comment on that? Because it's not even true. We are living in a democracy. We believe that the people that live in that place, in Serra d'Arga, has something to say about this this program that is going to be so aggressive, as such a huge changes to social changes, economic changes, and environmental changes, that people should give the chance to say, no, we don't want this program. So that's our objective. That's why our answer to this program, to this mining program, is radical. We won't accept not even one hole. Can you please? Thank you. So we have 3 battles. We have a battle against private requests for prospecting. We have a battle against public tender for lithium, and the battle against the national program to promote mining. Next. Thank you. This is one of the 4 private requests for lithium, for mining lithium, that the municipalities received last year in November. And the first one is called Aldeia, and it has 92.5 hectares. Next one, please. This is Aldeia, and it's not Aldeia. No, this is the one. This is the one. It's called Vilarinho, I'm so sorry. And it has 170.9 hectares. And the other one, please, is called Ledo, and it has 99 hectares. And the final one is called Cabanas, and it has 86.2 hectares. And this request was sent to the 3 municipalities to say whether they wanted, what were its decision. I do remember that the decision of the municipalities is not binding. It's the right word? Not binding?
Binding.
Mm-hmm.
Not binding. So the 3 municipalities, of course, we had a meeting with all of the presidents, the Câmara, all the mayors, and they all said, no, we are against it. So they sent the requests, the decision, the political decision, back to the ministry, and since November till now, nothing happened. So we are winning this battle, I believe. Next one, please. So the second one is the public tender, and this is a harder one. This is what they want to put in an auction, in an international auction. In 2019, there were 12 areas unofficial, but the minister said that there was 12 areas to go to an auction to do prospection and then to mine. So he said this public tender will take place in 2019. Then in 2019 he said no, it's 2020. And then in 2020 he said in 2021. And now the last thing he said it's going to be in 2022. So why is it so hard to do this public tender? Because movements and associations defending the territory got together and they said no, and they talked to the mayors and all the associations and environmental associations and all the community suddenly realized that lithium, this electrification and decarbonization and all these beautiful words like green, like they was going to change the world, it's a real danger to the territory, to heritage, to communities. So I believe that because of that, because what we did, not only us but also other movements and associations that we are networking with in unofficial manifesto that we all subscribed, I believe that we are winning this fight because we put the lithium subject first in the media agenda, and the media agenda turn it into a political issue. And that's the answer. That's when you know that things are going the right path, the right way. When it gets where lithium problem, when lithium becomes a problem, a political problem, and a political issue, that's when you know that we are in middle road of winning this fight, this battle. Next one, please. This is Arga. This is Arga, and this is the area that the minister wants to put in a public tender. It's, as you can see, the red lines, it's for the prospection and exploration, and the blue and white is not for prospection and exploration. The Serra d'Arga, I forgot to put a picture in my presentation. I'm so sorry, but it's beautiful. I'm so sorry. I see it every day. Sorry. It's beautiful. It has the Garrano horses. It has the wolves, and it has houses everywhere, but in small farming, and it's really beautiful. You have to go there. But the blue lines and the white ones doesn't matter because it doesn't have lithium. It's all granite, so it's really not worth it. So Serra d'Arga has 10,000 hectares, 26,700 hectares, and they want to put 10,000, more or less one-third, to public tender. For prospection, we know that mining won't be in 10,000 hectares, but 10,000 hectares are in danger. That's it. So all the community is in danger. Of course, there is no barriers in Serra d'Arga and Caminha and Viana do Castelo and Ponte Lima and everywhere, and Rio Minho over there, and Spain. There is no barrier for all the impacts that this mining can have. Next one, please. And this is, I believe, a nightmare. This is what, this has all the mining requests, concessions for prospection and mining. I don't know how to say exploração, mining. So as you can see, it's a lot of territory, and this territory is really in danger. So this is our third battle, and this is hard to win. Yeah. Next one, please. Next one. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So I believe that mining companies and the government made three big mistakes, and that's why I say we are winning this. And the first one was in Covas do Barroso, because it is a living proof of misconduct. Covas do Barroso is in Trás-os-Montes. Can you put the next slide, please? The Covas do Barroso is in Trás-os-Montes, and it has a concession already signed of prospection since 2014, I believe. And this was the prospection they did. If you can see what they did, they did these platforms that they deforestating. They made platforms to drill, and they did drills of 200 and 300 meters depth, and And of course, the population is nearby. It's a couple of meters. And of course, the water is 6 meters only deep. So what happened, it dry out 2 springs of water that local population really need to farm. Really need to farm. So this was the first mistake they did, because everybody then realized that this is no solution for nothing. Communities are in danger with this kind, and I repeat, this is only prospection. This is not mining. This is only prospection. And this is what they did. It was really a misconduct. Can you go back, please? Sorry. And the second mistake they did, they underestimated the countryside. Because they thought that the countryside was a bunch of poor and simple farmers, and that would accept everything, even this kind of mining, open pit mining. But that was the countryside from the 1990s and the 1980s. It's not the countryside of the 2000s and 2010s. The countryside has changed a lot. And then they thought that it was still the same. And that was the other big mistake. So there is a new countryside. I am a migrant. I was born in Viseu. I lived in Lisbon for 22 years, and I went to Pinho 7 years ago. And like me, there are a number of people doing that. So the countryside changed a lot, and there is massa crítica.
Critical mass.
Critical mass in the countryside, so they won't accept anything. So that was the other mistake. And the third mistake, they messed with the wrong crowd. And when I say they messed with the wrong crowd, they messed with Pinho. It's not because Pinho people, well, they're a bit grumpy, yes, it's true, but it's not because Pinho people is so very different of Trás-os-Montes people and Alentejo people. But there is one thing that is different from the others. In Pinho, the last 20 years, Pinho has, how can I say, invested a lot, a big amount in the last 20 years, invested in rehabilitation of the territory, in the real sustainability of the territory. So this kind of investment, is questioned with a project that is going to have 15 years and is going to destroy everything we worked for in the last 20 years. So that was, I believe, the third mistake. The next one, yes, please. Thank you. So we thought about 3 ways to fight: inspiring the population, keeping the fight in the political arena, and demonstrating that green mining is a fallacy. The third one I'm going to talk about in the end, but the first 2, we were, the Movimento SOS Serra d'Água was born in June 2019 when they were talking about the public tender and the Arga is going to be there. So we had to move fast and furious. So we thought about, you remember that band in the 1980s, Rage Against the Machine? So we thought we have to do, we have to work fast and furious. We have to be in press. We have to question the mayors. So that's what we did. We questioned the mayors. We pointed the finger and said, are you willing to put in danger your population, your territory, or are you going to say publicly that you are against this project? So fortunately, and because I am a pain in the ass. Fortunately, the 5 mayors said, we are against it. Viana do Castelo, Caminha, Vila Nova de Cerveira, Paredes de Coura, and Ponte Lima said, we are against it. So what we are in constant communication with the mayors and also with presidentes da junta, I don't know how to say in English, presidentes da junta, and we do things that inspire people, that can make people come to us, and also that has big lines in the local press and, of course, if possible, in national press. So we did things like this one. Next, thank you. This is, I don't know if it was in the beginning of the pandemic, so in 2020, we did this, how do you say, faixas?
Banners.
Stripes,
Banners.
These big banners with Galicia. And we thought, we have, the Minho River is also in danger. So in the other side of Rio Minho, there is Galiza. And Galiza, they are really fighters. They are really good. And so we talked with them, we talked the municipalities on the other side of the border and the municipalities on this side of the border. So we put in this bridge over the Rio Minho, it's the bridge that separates and joins the two communities, these banners that says o Minho contra as minas, o Minho contra as minhas. That's it. So in Galego and in Portuguese is the same. And we use the same colors because we're popular. And it was big. All the TV networks were there. All the press was there. All the population was there. So it's all about, it helps. I was a journalist, so it helps. I know how to make a buzz out of something really simple. So the second one, the next one, please. And the other thing that we did is we wrote a manifest that says, Minas aqui nunca mais. It says, here...
never again.
Never again. Mines here, never again. And it was subscribed by 28, it's now with 30 juntas de freguesia that says, and we are talking about a territory that had mining in the 1940s, in the 1960s, and some in the 1980s. So they know what is mining. They know the danger that is mining. They know that mining, what did to the territory was desertification, immigration, poverty. It gave nothing to the territory in the 1940s, in the 1960s, in the 1980s. So what these juntas de freguesia are saying that we don't want mines here, never again. And it's a huge, big thing, I believe. It's really, it's a very aggressive thing to say, that we don't want mines here, never again. So we are in this constant talk with the local politics, because we know that they also are part of the population. So next one, please. And this is our three objectives. The first one, put an end to the auction. That's obvious, because we don't want our and the others, because we are in network and solidarity with the others, the other movements and the other areas, put an end to an auction. And the second one, keep the Minister and the Secretary of State hanging on to their jobs. Just teasing you. I believe that there's no country would like public servers like these ones. But yes, their work is so is being so poor that they are really helping us having no mines in our territory. And the third one, reconquer the ability to decide on our own future. And that's the point of our movement. We believe that is the local communities that have to say something about their future. There's no development without the participation of the population. There's no sustainability without the participation of the population. So this is our goal. The goal of the Movimento SOS Serra d'Arga is to give back that power to the people to decide what they want for their territory and for their future. We are not talking, the Movimento is not going to talk about electrification, it's not going to talk about decarbonization. The Movimento talks about what the population it represents wants for its territory. So thank you, that's it. Oh, no, sorry. No, there's a last one.
Last slide.
The last one. And the last one is our minister. And he said, the last thing he said is, why is everyone picking on lithium? What he doesn't, it looks like he's making himself looking like victim. That's really bad. Looking like a victim and like a drama king. And he still doesn't realize that it's not about lithium. It's not about lithium. So thank you.
Thank you, Carlos, for driving up from Pinho to be here with us today. And thank you all for bearing with us and with the blackout. I will be very brief with my questions, and the first one goes for Júlia, who made the first introduction and very accurately pointed to the inequality that carbon neutrality projects bring. So I wanted to ask you, what direction should the energy law take, and what success case studies can we look into?
Regarding equity.
Yes, and better production of energy as well.
Yeah, I think there is a problem a little before this type of questions, and as you can, as we just hear is a question how to make these policy decisions, and in the case of the energy, we have two different models in our ahead of us. One is this centralized based model, which came from the past. We just changed the coal power plants to the solar PV, but the structure of the business is exactly the same, the companies are exactly the same, and okay, there is no CO2 emissions, but there are the other problems and the other consequences in terms of sustainability and equity. Another alternative to this is to involve the families, the small companies, as energy producers as well, okay? But, and there is technology for that. But the business case is very, very different, because one thing is to put millions in a project, a big one, which carry these financial services with and these investors. I mean, the same way to do business. And the alternative is to give the power to the people to put some investment there. I mean, different families, and it is completely different model. I mean, and at this moment, I just don't understand why are we going very fast, because it creates this speech about we have to accelerate this energy transition. This means that you have to take the old model, we just change the technology. So we are doing exactly the same as the old-fashioned. And there is several examples in Europe. I'm sorry, I I'm used to study more the European reality, but there are in several countries, even here very near in Spain, but also in Austria and so on, where people are organized themselves in energy cooperatives. So they put their savings there. There is a cooperative model managing the investment, and there is, of course, the policy regulation allowing for this, okay? I think this is a more interesting model to follow, and for several reasons. So, and one of them is when you put the people in this type of models, for example, the solar PV are implementing not as a big projects, but in the roofs on their houses. We are in the same. I mean, our country is so small. There is no difference between Alentejo and the roofs in Lisbon. So why is the difference about this? And of course, there are the need to invest more on the energy distribution system, because to put hundreds or thousands of solar PVs in the roofs of the city of Lisbon, for example, is a bit different than put the equivalent in a concentrated solar project. But there is solutions for them. I mean, the problem is not technology. The problem is a model of development of the energy system. And unfortunately, what I see in the case of Portugal and in Spain as well, and in other countries, is to favor the old model. I mean, very centralized in terms of production, in terms of financing, in terms of beneficiaries, in terms of,
Thank you. And Paulo, you're here with us still. I would like to ask you, how do you work in your collective, first in terms of collaboration with Spain, being that the River Tejo, it's an Iberian river, and it's connected with forestation along the whole peninsula, and also how you battle against the economic model that is behind the dams that you try to fight against?
Well, it's a nice question. We work in a network of citizenship network of the Iberian movements and associations that are in an Iberian network for a new culture of water. And we work making mobilization in Spain and in Portugal. They join us, and we join them when they do their projects. About the dams, we have the last 120 kilometers of free Tagus River, and we think that it should be preserved. If there are the construction of dams till Lisbon, there will be great impacts in all the Tagus, in all the ecosystem, and also in the estuary of Tagus. So this is a big problem, and the energy produced by dams, there should be ecological flows that could be regular in each season, according to that season. In summer, we have more flow than in winter. This is the correct ecological flow of water, not what is presented now, that is totally reversed by the hydroelectric production of water. And this has impacts in also in the ecosystems, but also in the cultural inheritance associated to the river. We have the Almorol Castle, that is the only castle that we have in an island, and sometimes there is no flow, and it's not a nice one during till the flow goes up again. So this has an impact in the heritage we have in terms of cultural, material, and immaterial heritage. So we can manage the hydroelectric production in a way that the ecological needs are satisfied, and the patrimonial and cultural needs also, not just the economic need of having profit. And there should be a balance in this, and it could have. And also, all the dams and weirs that are obsolete, that are not efficient, they should be removed if there is no increased impact in environmental terms. So there should be also a change, and the strategy of the European Community for Biodiversity 2030 also goes in that way, that we should free 25,000 kilometers of rivers, and not ending with the last 120 kilometers of Tagus River that we have free just for intensive agriculture. And there are other ways to take the water from the river. We can have the water directly. The enterprise for Águas de Portugal do it in Valada, in Cartacho. They take water directly from the Tagus, and they distribute it to the metropolitan area of Lisbon. So if this is possible for human consumption, also is possible for agriculture, instead of making the fragmentation of the river, of the habitats, of the ecosystem, and producing problems in till the estuarium.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to ask if the other panelists have a question, either for any of the members or anybody in the audience. Tu tens uma pergunta?
Margarida.
Yes, I want to ask Paulo if he knows Cabeço do Peão and the problem with the Rio Zezer, that it is an affluent of the Tejo, and Cabeço do Peão is a mining rejeitados. It's huge mining rejects. The question is not if it's going to fall down the Rio Zezer, it's when it's going to fall down the Rio Zezer, because everyone that goes there is going to be frightened with that. So you know that problem in Rio Zezer that is always has a pollution problem every year.
Yes, we know that there exists a problem. It has to have a solution. It's a huge danger for the Tagus, for the Zezer River, because it has dangerous pollution, and if it goes to Zezer, it would cause problem to the water that is taken from Zezer to Lisbon to human consumption. It would provoke innumerable problems to the populations, and bring a big contamination to the water. So, but it's a difficult solution for that dangerous residuals, but it has to be solved, and we don't see any action from the government in that way.
And you know, because of lithium. One of the areas they want to do a lithium mine is Argemela. It's nearby, and it's going to Rio Zezer again. So Rio Zezer and Rio Tejo they are still in danger with mining, future mining and past mining.
Yes, in ISA they wanted to make uranium mining also, and they say but uranium is not with high prices in the market, so they give up that idea, but they say that it's better to take it from the radioactivity from the land and to let it there. And we say that the radioactivity, it's in the land, it's the natural radioactivity. If you open, it will create artificial radioactivity. And the uranium, it's a higher problem, and there is also in ISA, in the river Tagus, and it would produce the water going to the river with all these problems, like in lithium or other ones.
Thank you, Paul, for bringing up that question. I think it's really important to have the mining and water movements in conversation. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to include you in this panel. It's because we don't have more time. And it's also in connection with João's presentation, the desertification of the land and how the whole hydraulic system is being so changed. And we foresee in decades, that we don't know how the situation is going to be. But I want to pass the word to Susan Schupley, who's online from the collective, for the next question.
Well, thank you, Margarida. In some way, the question, to some degree, has been just answered, because one of the questions I wanted to ask Paolo about rewilding of rivers, and what's happened in the United Kingdom, where I live, is historic concentrations of contaminants are being re-released through these rewilding practices that are happening in the UK. So the weirs and the dams that they're removing under the framework of the river's right to flow are recontaminating the water system, because in many cases, historic pollutants are somewhat contained in these kind of aging kind of infrastructures. So there's been a complete kind of, maybe not reversal, but a rethinking of all of these rewilding of the river projects here, because of the danger that changing these, like removing these kind of blockages, which in some way are containing. So anyway, I wanted to just hear your thoughts on that, and also more broadly around this notion of the river's right to flow, but also the river's right to water, and whether those are like campaigns that you find very provocative for yourself.
Well, this is an interesting question, and we're talking about the 120 kilometers of a river that is still free, and this we should preserve. There should be maintained alive and with life, and not just fragmented, just for agriculture, intensive agriculture that can have water in other way. The other dams, effectively, there are many Spanish dams that in the bottom of the dam has so much pollution accumulated that when there is less water, the water warms, and it starts to become like sulfúrica, água sulfúrica. And if it's liberated, it destroys all the ecological systems above. So, for doing that, if the dams are obsolete, they should be treated. This kind of residuals should be retired. taken off these places before putting the dams down. But these are studies that have to be done. It was why I say that we have to see the environmental impacts of that. And we have to be careful when we remove them. There are other kind of ecosystems that were created there. And what are the impacts in the ecosystems that exists in the dam that is already there? And these are cost-effective changes that we have to evaluate in each case that is taking an action. And there was a last question, but I'm a little lost about the change of water, the water being maintained in the river or taken.
No, it was just, it's fine. It was more, there's been a sort of a movement and an emergence of rights-based claims that rivers should have the natural right to water, or movements around a sort of river rights. And I just wondered whether that was part of your movement as well.
No, we, the biodiversity and the human life, have a right to water, like any kind of life. And that is the main message, and that we want to give, is that we have to have water in quantity, in quality, to preserve biodiversity and the sustainability of our own life. That is the final aim we want, and also, if we are altruist, we think about all other species. Just that. Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for your response.
Sophia, do you have a question? No. Alvar, would you like to? Let's wait for the microphone. No? Eerst?
Just two very short questions. One.
Okay. Go.
Two very short questions. One for Júlia. You said that there are three main strategies for the mainstream climate transition, energy transition strategy. But you didn't mention one thing, reduction. You said we need electricity. Yes, we do need electricity, or we need energy, but do we need this much energy that we are using right now? I think reduction, because there were the famous 3 R's a few years ago, but somehow even activists, politicians, I understand, they don't want to use the third R, reduction, because of course that doesn't bring votes. But activists, I think they should talk about reduction. And one for Carlos. You said that you're not against mining. Apparently, we do need lithium for the energy transition. So there is a little problem here. There is an expression in English that is not in my backyard. How do you respond to this criticism somehow that people say, well, I don't want a mine in my backyard, but somebody is going to get a mine in their backyard? Okay, thank you.
Podes dar o microfone.
Desculpa? Sim.
Força.
Okay, I can start. Yes, I refer the reduction. I refer electrification, efficiency, and behavioral changes. And behavioral changes, one of the things is to reduce the demand of energy services. I make this little distinction between energy services and energy consumption. Energy services refers to, for example, the mobility that I need to go from the point A to point B. Energy consumption is the consumption of diesel or electricity to go from point A to point B. And indeed, what we need to reduce is the energy services. And there is several ways to do that. For example, regarding mobility, the remote working schemes is one of the strategies to reduce mobility, the commuting mobility, for example, in the cities. So this type of mainstream assessment tools, they make some assumptions on this reduction of mobility services. And other services, for example, if you invest a lot in buildings rehabilitation, we are reducing the need for energy services regarding, I mean, the climate comfort, the thermal comfort inside the house. So these type of assumptions are included in that behavioral change that I referred.
Yeah. I can give you my opinion, but the movement is not against minds. We had to simplify our speech, our narrative. We are not going to discuss as a movement, as a movimento. We are not going to discuss that. We are not. We are not supposed to discuss that. But do you want my opinion? I'm a farmer in Pinho with fungus. I do need mines. I need the copper. I need the sulfur. So it would be, if there are elements in movimento that are against extractivism, any kind of extractivism. But personally, I can't be. I use copper and I use sulfur, and I'm an organic farmer, and I do need them because I would have nothing without copper and farming. Is that NIMBY I don't want in my backyard? I don't have a problem with that, but if I have to answer this finger pointing, if it was, no, not you, but there were some that said that you have mobiles, you need these mines. So I'm not going to discuss that as a movement. We are not going to discuss as a movement. But personally, I would say there is several ways of reducing and recycling the lithium that we need. Recycling is possible. It's being done, but it's much more expensive than extracting it. So that's the big problem. But that's my opinion, and the movement is not going to discuss that. It doesn't have to discuss that. The movement was born to protect territory and heritage and population. That's it. So when they say that's NIMBY, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not going to discuss that. The movement is not going to discuss that.
And can I compliment? Do you know why it is so much expensive recycling the lithium? Because the way this stuff is designed do not allow to extract it easily. So the thing has to be taken as the very beginning of the devices. I mean, take all the chain, all the production chain of the products that you use.
I want to say one more thing. In Covas do Barroso, there was the presentation of Estudo de Impacto Ambiental.
Environmental impact assessment.
Exactly. And we also were there, and we asked how much carbon would the mine would be released, would the mine produce, and they said 33 tons per year. The whole region of Barroso produces 8 tons per year. 8. One mine will produce 33 tons per year. So when you talk about decarbonization, and the power of electric cars, there's the Volvo over there, the electric cars, well, you have to go back and know how much plastic does it need, how much carbon was released mining it. The cobalto in Congo, it's unbelievable. Children mining. So, but again, that's my opinion. It's not Movimento that has to bring up these questions, because we have to simplify this narrative. And it's really difficult to deconstruct the green mining and decarbonization and the energetic transition. It's really difficult. It's not an easy thing to discuss. It's not yes, no, no. It's not white and black. It's big fog over there. So we are not going to discuss that.
In relation to that, I wanted to bring up, as a deep sea mining activist, that on a recent study from the University of Sydney, we've come to read that for a full energetic transition, 100%, there is no need either for seabed mining nor for new mines to be opened. All the existing ore, if it's mined, in a responsible way, which all the ethical codes would have to change, and there will be, there had to be a governmental and systematic change over that. We don't need new ores. So I think it's very important to clarify this here. I wanted to pass the word to TJ Demons, curator of the collective, who's here online with us, to have a question, and then we have another question from the audience. TJ.
Hey, thanks, Margarida, and thank you everyone for your presentations. I have a few questions. One is in terms of Julia's presentation. Shouldn't we also critically question models of carbon neutrality, which depend on geoengineering technologies, specifically of carbon capture, which are not currently available, at least at scale? And I'm in agreement that the mainstream narrative of a green energy transition is a false solution based on sustaining largely current economic models of growth and energy-intensive forms of life. So isn't this where models of smart degrowth, as someone asked earlier, they become crucial, and also at the structural level, so that we can save the Tagus, and so that we can stop the extractivism in Pinho, as Paulo and Carlos have demanded. And my last overarching question for everyone, one could very well argue that we must think beyond the framework of the dominant economic framework, according to which the resolution of green capitalist contradictions between the extractivist and anti-democratic growth economy and ecological sustainability and social justice can only occur in a post-capitalist eco-socialism. So I'm wondering if people agree with this, or if anyone actually thinks that green capitalism can actually save us. And thank you again.
Thank you very much for your question. These modeling tools, they are they have some, we used to have these quotations. Every models are wrong, but some of them are useful. So usually, I have this kind of a personal battle when I use the model that we use in my research team and provide some results to the policymakers. Because the policymakers usually want some numbers to believe in. And no matter if I put many assumptions and many safeguards and cautions in the results, the politics needs these numbers to build their future. In a way, they have to make some vision, and they make some decision making and some laws at the end of the day. So these models are very useful, but in their specific context. These integrated energy and environmental models, indeed, it introduces also the energy technologies, the environmental impacts, the emissions, the water consumption, and so on, and also some economics. But there is, after that, there is a layer of this, for example, social equity, for example, and there is no such a model that includes all aspects at once, at the same time. All the models are very partial, so it is very dangerous, and this is one of the dangers to put scientists directly with the politics. There is the need to someone in the middle in order to translate the speeches, You referred this carbon capture. Well, I have to tell you, at this moment, what is more in the discourse, in the mainstream narrative, is carbon capture and utilization. This means that we can take the CO2 from the emissions at the chimneys, for example. We can compress the CO2, and we can transport the CO2 and use the CO2 for industrial purposes, for example. There are several, at this moment, the cost is quite high, but there are projects underway at a real scale. So I can envision that this carbon capture and utilization, not sequestration. Sequestration is to put the CO2 somewhere in the bottom of the ocean, for example, if it is offshore. Could be for some industrial purpose an important thing, yes. But there are several other technologies. For example, one of that I'm studying at this moment and try to understand what is the impact of that is the direct air capture, the carbon direct air capture, because we are surrounded by molecules of CO2. So there are these technologies that is sucking the CO2 where we are, compress the CO2 and put that for some utilization. Indeed we are, and this is a very last comment from my, indeed we are in a very important crossroad. We have indeed to reduce the CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. Otherwise, our climate system is evolved in a very dangerous way. And we can see, I'm hearing all the interventions, and we can list, the coal power plants, not okay because they release a lot of CO2. The hydropower, not okay because there are lots of impacts, environmental impacts, as Paulo shows us. Nuclear, not okay because there is this very high risk perception and it is a real thing. Solar, there is this sustainability impact. But in the other end, we need this electricity. Either if you reduce some 20% or 30% of that, we still need electricity. So what's up? I think we have to discuss a bit more on that and to try to understand what is this thing about the technologies, because I'm an environmental engineering, so I take this course very early in the 80s. And in that stage, I believed that we could live in a good way with the nature. But as I'm coming older, when I take one thing for sure, everything we have, every simple thing that we need to have for our daily lives, there is an impact in the nature, in one way or another. So the point here is how to organize the things in order to reduce, to minimize these type of impacts. But there is no free lunches for that. Thank you.
Paulo.
May I say one word? In proTEJO, we have municipalities of every kind of ideology. And there are many ideologies, and we have, but the water problem, the river problem is a problem of all of them. It's transversal. So that happens with the other problem of the energy and the carbon. And we have many countries, and I'm not hoping that everyone is taking the same social and political model to solve that problem. But they should understand that it's a transversal problem to all countries, and we have to adopt some minimal measures and to solve it together. And the ideologic and political model that is in each country should adapt to that needed to solve this energy problem. It's my position, and because I don't expect everyone change into the same model. Thank you.
I think we have a question from the audience now, from Sophia. And then we wrap up. It's the last question of the evening.
Okay. Hello. Posso tirar? Yeah. No, it was basically following up on what Alfredo was saying. I think is, and what Júlia said in the beginning. Yeah, you said that one of the problems is for the exhaustion of the planet is population growth. And I think that is one of the most dangerous things that can be said, because that is being used to hide the fact that we, the global north, need to radically change our consumption pattern. So, because when we say that the problem is the population, what are we talking about? Who is having loads of kids? Are we in Europe? No. We are old. We don't have a population problem. So to address it via the population is really comfortable for us, because we don't have to do anything. It's again the global south who needs to change their family, their population, yes. But those are over around 90% of the population in the planet, and they are responsible for as little as 8 to 12% of CO2 emissions. So if we do the calculation the other way around, and this is done by researcher from Goldsmiths called Jason Hickel. He posts these statistics all the time. He says that there's the global north that accounts for 92% of the CO2 emissions.